All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Feel free to, we have a small group, so I feel like we could do some quick intros. If you feel like unmuting and introducing yourself, great. If not, you can pop in the chat. Hello, I'm Cedar. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the Climate Network Manager at the Wild Center. And I am one of the organizations that's co-hosting the New York State Cohort Day for the Summer Institute this year. So, welcome and thanks for joining us.
And I am the other New York co-host. I'm Don Haas. I'm the Director of Teacher Programming at the Center for Climate Change Education at the Paleontological Research Institution, which is in Ithaca, though I telecommute from Buffalo, where it is raining and has been all day. So I will now pass it off to Lindsay and note my rain.
Oh my gosh, amazing rain.
My name's Lindsay Kirkland, she, her. I might turn my video off if my audio is scratchy because I'm visiting my family and I'm literally in the middle of a cornfield in a house and the wind is just chaotic. So the internet's not great. But I use she, her pronouns. I'm Climate Generation's climate change education manager, and we run the Institute with the help of all the cohort leaders, which we're very thankful for. And I'm here just to give an overview of what the Institute is all about. And I see some people have introduced themselves in the chat, so I'll send it back to Cedar.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for introducing yourselves in the chat, everyone. It's great to have you with us. No worries, Sherry. Thanks for joining, and Emily and Patricia, everyone else on the call. And yeah, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat if you haven't already. And let's get started. Welcome to the sneak peek of the New York State Cohort Day and also overview of the Summer Institute. So we can drum up some excitement for these days that are going to be happening in July this year, July 14th through 15th, with our Cohort Day on the 16th. All right, so we're gonna get started here today, just kind of an overview of what our agenda looks like for this meeting, and then we're gonna do a little opener activity. So, we're gonna start with some welcome overview and opener. That's where we are right now in the agenda. Then we'll pass it over to Lindsay, who's gonna do an overview of the Teach Climate Network Summer Institute and a Q&A for anybody who wants to learn more about how to register or any questions that we might have for her. Then we'll pass it over to Don, and Don is going to talk a little bit about the Regents exams updates and climate connections to those exams this year and rolling out next school year as well. So that will be a really exciting update. That's very new information for most of us. Then we're going to do a little overview of like what we've done in the past for New York State Cohort Day, what we're thinking about doing this year, and then get your all's insights into what we might be able to do this year. If you have any speaker suggestions, activities, or things that you'd like to see, themes. So please be thinking about that as we go through the presentation today. And we'll have some time at the end to discuss um, any of your ideas. All right, we're gonna start with an opener today. So if you have ever seen the Climate Ribbons project, this is, if, I don't know if you've ever seen this before. This is a relatively new project to me. I was just at a youth climate summit that did this activity, which was really cool. They actually did it on an old like Christmas tree wreath ring and had it hanging from the ceiling, which is really cool. So there's lots of different variations of the Climate Ribbon project. But one of the questions that you answer in the Ribbon project is you write on a ribbon, what do you love and not want to lose to climate change? And so we're going to answer that question together. So I'll open the floor. Feel free to unmute and share, or you can type in the chat, and we'll just spend a few minutes exploring this question together.
And I'll start. I would hate to lose the fall foliage in upstate New York.
A good one.
I would hate to lose the seasonal changes.
Yeah, seasons are really important to me too. I feel that one. It's a good one.
Mm, yep. Water quality matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to say water quality, like swimmability of local waterways.
Mm.
That's happened for flooding or due to flooding. Yeah.
Yeah, Lake Champlain. I live in Burlington, Vermont, and Lake Champlain is less and less swimmable every year because of the algal blooms.
And we have resources, by the way, for teaching about algal blooms.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Feel free to sh pop those in the chat, Don. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Emily, I would hate to lose many plants and animals. Yeah, biodiversity is a big one. I think for me, I think a lot about like particular bird species that I love, like the loon. Um, and I know particularly in the Adirondacks where I work, in upstate New York, loons are really at risk with the freeze thaw cycles that we're in. And with warming winters, it makes it really dangerous because the loons have a hard time on the ice. And so if the ice freezes too late or thaws too early, it can cause issues for birds like loons who depend on the lakes for their nesting and their food. So that's one thing I think about a lot. Thanks everybody for sharing. All right. I'm going to pass it over to Lindsay. Go for it. And you can tell
Thanks.
me
I'll
slide if you need me to change.
Sure. Yeah, I will. I am going to turn off my video just because I don't want it to be choppy, and I think it'll help. Okay, thanks. So Climate Generation is a nonprofit based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. You can see the little logo on the map. We run a program called the Teach Climate Network, and it's been going, I think since 2013 now. And this is a loose network that gathers educators together, both formal and non-formal, and we offer climate change professional development. We do monthly workshops. We do a monthly e-news called The Tips. It has tips and tricks for teaching climate change. We do some paid opportunities like piloting our resources that we author or some small working groups like communities of practice. And we host the annual Summer Institute. And you can sign up for the network. I'll paste in the link later on, but that's not the point of why we're here today, but you can sign up for it and you get all these things. But today we're here to talk about the Summer Institute, and you go to the next slide. So this year is our 20th annual Summer Institute. And since COVID, the Institute has been 3 days, 3 to 4 days for some people, of virtual extravaganza. Basically, climate change professional development from all over the United States and Canada, basically. It's a series of 3 consecutive days, sometimes 4, depending on what cohorts you're in. It's basically like a climate change education conference. We have concurrent sessions, plenary sessions, keynotes, and then a lot of different opportunities to win prizes and giveaways. And then the real unique feature of the Summer Institute is that we have a cohort day. And a cohort day is usually hosted on the 3rd or 4th day of the event. And we have regional cohorts at the Summer Institute. So we have different leaders from different locations across the country hosting a single workshop day. And so this, what Cedar and Don will be talking to you about, is the New York cohort day. And you can go to the next slide. We're in the midst of planning this year's Institute, but we have 6 major themes that the sessions will fit into. They're understanding and observing climate change, regrounding and resilience, education for justice, levers for change, climate change education policy, and educators as change makers and champions. And I'll explain just a few words about each one of these in a second. But each theme, usually we have about 5 to 6 sessions per theme. A session is like a workshop or an event. We have different pathways for elementary educators, middle school and high school educators, and non-formal. We have a specific pathway that we might think is appropriate for people who are new to teaching climate change or folks that are new to justice-based education. We think that's important just to highlight those because some folks might feel uncomfortable jumping into a whole conference about climate change or justice. And so we wanted to make sure that they have some easy avenues in. I would say over 50% of the sessions feature resources and materials that you can use right away in your classrooms, which is awesome. That's like a big value of ours. And we do have events where you can get off screen too. Because we know virtual can be hard to do for 3 or 4 days in a row, right? Most of the time, what teachers experience is in the first 2 days, there's maybe 30 different sessions they can choose from across these themes. And they might choose 10 to engage in the first 2 days. And then they spend their whole cohort day with their cohort leader. You can go to the next slide. So I'll give you a little peek into what these sessions might look like. So Leah Prussia is one speaker, and she is going to be hosting a workshop called Maintaining Curiosity and Connection in a Dysregulated World. So our theme of building personal resilience or resilience really looks at how do we understand and validate the emotions we're having in response to the climate crisis, and how do we process those together and move through them into a place of action? And the workshops in this theme, like Leah's, give us the skills and resources we need to do that. And you can go on to the next slide. We also have Sheldon Akins presenting with us this year, and he'll be presenting on asset-based climate storytelling. So Sheldon is in the formal education world. He has had many different positions as like principal and teacher. And he is really passionate about justice-based education. So what he comes into and talks about is how do we weave together justice-based education in the formal learning environment to really support empowerment and efficacy and agency toward climate resilience. So he comes from a lens of like cultural responsiveness and asset-based planning and teaching. So his workshop's really great. And this would be housed in our teaching for climate justice theme. And you can go on to the next one. And we're always really excited to have Ruthie with us. And I should say, each one of these presenters have come to the Institute for 3 or 4 years now. Many of our presenters love it and come annually. So, but each year we do have new people too. So anyway, Ruthie is with the Yale program on climate communications, and she was a former high school science teacher and now is in the non-formal education sector. But she comes and talks about Yale's teaching tools for educators, where they can learn about, what does the public believe or think about climate change? What does that tell me about my students and their communities? And how can I tailor my messaging to those people? So this would fall under our like understanding and observing climate change, or sometimes also, I forget which one, this could be in our resilience one too. So basically, how do we build connections and ways of communicating about climate change to our communities? Yeah, you can go on to the next one. So we have, like I said, about 30 different speakers. All of their profiles as of today are on our webpage. You can actually go to our webpage and see who everyone is. We didn't put all the workshop descriptions there, but the workshop titles are all there. And I'll provide a direct link to that in just a minute. And you can go on to the next one too. Thanks. So one thing that most people don't know, and what's special information for you because you're attending a sneak peek, is a little bit about the Whova platform that we host our event on. So we purchased Whova, which is a conferencing platform. It's basically a one-stop shop for the Summer Institute. All of your Zoom links are there. You can create a personal agenda. You can talk to everyone one-to-one, including presenters most of the time. You can participate or create your own discussion boards or on topics that interest you. We have a curated resource list where we have everything from every workshop put in one place. And we have recordings of all of the sessions there. And you can also share photos. In here, I have linked to the last year's how-to video. If you really want to see what the platform looks like, it's like a 10-minute video you can watch. And go to the last thing, I think. And I just wanted to give you a sense of like, what do you leave with? Educators always leave super inspired and super excited about the year ahead. And they also really find themselves steeped in a community of people who really care and are passionate about climate change education. And I think that's the biggest thing folks take away. Of course, you leave with dozens and dozens of resources and names and contacts of people you can talk to. But I think that feeling of like, oh, I'm not alone and I feel inspired to do a little bit more is the big takeaway for most people. And with that, that's all I plan to share. I can pause and ask if there's any questions. I'm happy to answer any questions you have if you have anything specific. Yeah, I think, Don, there was another conference recently that used HUBA, the Midwest Climate Collaboratives Summit used it. So it's a pretty good platform. We always get pretty high ratings, although it's not the most beautiful thing, but it is functional and easy to understand, I think, for the most part. So
I will say, as an attendee and presenter at the Summer Institute for the past several years, that this is definitely one of the most valuable, like, virtual experiences I've ever attended. It's really interactive. I feel like the speakers and the workshops are always really, really high quality. And yeah, it's just like Climate Generation is really, really good at facilitating online dialogues and interactive activities and workshops. So even the pieces that you all are facilitating are always excellent. And yeah, if you haven't attended in the past, I highly recommend signing up. There's scholarships available, like Lindsay has on the slide here. And you get access to our cohort day if you're in New York State, and other cohort days if you're not. So definitely worth the money, or, if you can't afford it, scholarships, please apply. And we would love to have you.
cool. Well, I put some links to the things I talked about in the chat. They're in the slides too, but there they are. And I will pass it on to Dawn to keep us going.
So I'm going to give a little update on climate change education policy in New York and how that is changing. You can click again there. And unfortunately, the bill for climate education that I had been one of the throng who are the members of the Climate and Resilience Education Task Force, which is a statewide group working on climate change education. Our bill and the associated appropriation both failed failed to make it into the budget for this year. And that's a bummer, but there are still good things happening. So you want to click again. And again. So that map is from the Yale Climate Change Communication Group that Lindsay mentioned. And it shows that 83% of New Yorkers think that we should be teaching about climate change in K-12 schools. And to some degree we are. It's a little bit more than it has been in the past. But again, it's frustrating that our appropriation didn't pass. But there are good things going on. Next slide. Oh, there's the New York. Click once more for the next slide. So good things are still happening. So climate instruction is an expectation from the New York State Education Department beginning in the 26-27 academic year. And the seal of civic readiness, which is in place now, is an option for students to get that seal, and 2 more clicks to show the associated graphics with that. So that first block is from the the portrait of a graduate document and the seal of civic readiness, and we put the link to the slideshow in the chat earlier, and in the slideshow you can click on those images and it will take you to the related information on the NICEAD site. Next slide. New science regents exams are looking like they will pay more attention to climate change. So click again. So the new Regents Earth Science and Biology exams debut next month for some students in New York State, and for the schools that aren't doing it this year, they'll be doing it next year. And next bullet, please. And the new Physics and Chemistry Regents exams come out next year. For both of those, they've released some sample questions. And click a couple more times to get us to the next slide. And again, on the slideshow, you can click on those links. So this is from the biology sample clusters that were released, I think, in the late fall or early winter. And that's just a piece of the cluster of questions about coral reefs and how they are changing. So that's maybe between 10 and 20% of the content on the slide there. There's a fair amount of information on that with a fair number of questions that students have to answer on that in the sample cluster. And the next slide has the chemistry stuff from the chemistry sample clusters that were just released maybe less than a month ago, about a month ago. And there is some pretty high level stuff on greenhouse gases and connecting it to reality and how New York is banning gas hookups in new construction is part of the phenomenon connected to those questions. And again, that's just a small piece of that sample cluster. Next slide. And in getting ready for this, I started looking back through recent Regents exams, and I think I put this in one of the promos, so you may know the answer. It surprised me, though. Which disciplines recent Regents exams are most likely to include in-depth climate content? Anybody want to shout out an answer? You can just go ahead and click it. It is the English Language Arts exam. 4 of the last 6 ELA exams had fairly substantial climate content, and you can click 4 times to show those, and they link to the exams themselves. The last administration of the exam in January had an argument essay on veganism. The June exam from last year had one on vertical farming. The August 23 exam had one on styrofoam, and the June 23 exam had a really extensive one on solar geoengineering. And there's an excerpt from that on the next slide. So you click the next slide. And this just shows you a tiny bit of what was there, the titles of the texts. And it's I thought, a very interesting question. I think it's very interesting that ELA had so much of that. I will also note that I am disappointed on how little there is on the social studies exam. There was, I think, one essay and one small cluster of questions in one of the Regents exams, and the other times that it showed up on social studies Regents exams was as wrong answers in multiple choice questions. And I think that means we need to talk to the person who heads up writing the social studies exam at NICEAD. Next slide goes to Cedar.
All right, thanks, Don. I have a
I could
question
take
for
questions if there are questions.
Yeah, I have a question for you actually to kick
Yes.
off questions. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about because I'm not a formal educator in New York State. So can you talk a little bit about what the Regent exams are and their significance to students?
Yes.
Like to
So
K-12. Like I don't even know what grades.
Right, right.
exams. So
So the Regents exams are high school exams. There are state exams that aren't called Regents exams at lower grade levels, but the ones that are actually have the title Regents exam are given in high school. All of the science ones are end of course exams. There are four of them in science: earth science, biology, chemistry, and physics. And biology is the new old name. It was living environment for a couple of decades, but I believe it's going back to biology with the new exam starting this year. And students need to at least attempt a number of Regents exams in science. I believe it's two currently. And they have to take three science courses. And I believe they are required to pass one Regents exam. And the Regents exam is often figured into grading, but that varies by school district. So it ends up with a percentage score that may or may not be an actual percentage of questions, because sometimes they do have a curve sort of thing associated with them. They were established by the New York State Legislature. In the New York State Legislature, I believe, in 1864, and the first Regents exams were administered in 1865. And the format of them tends to stay the same for decades. So there's some changes coming with the new biology and earth science exams this year. But I think it's still, mostly a multiple choice. Well, there are things beyond multiple choice, but a lot of it is multiple choice. And that innovation was introduced in the 1920s, so they do update things from time to time. Um, and it really drives a lot of what gets taught in classrooms. So, how's that for an answer?
that was perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? I also looked at math exams and found nothing on climate, though there is so much mathematics associated with understanding climate change in a deep way. Uh,
Totally.
so I'm hoping we will eventually see that in there.
Yeah, definitely.
It's also very much worth noting that there is talk of moving away from the Regents exam as a requirement,
Mhm.
um, and uh, um, and we will see what happens with that. But there is interest in getting away from standardized tests for everything, as we have done for more than 150 years in New York State.
Yeah, that would be really interesting to explore as a state and
Mhm.
see what comes up in terms of standards and what teachers use in their classrooms. Totally.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Well, if you have any other questions for Don, please feel free to speak up or unmute and or put it in the chat, and we're happy to answer those. And we're going to transition into talking about our cohort day, why we're all here today. So I have helped lead, supported or led this cohort day, New York State cohort day for the last 4 years. The first year I participated as a liaison, so I took notes and kind of just like back end supported the Summer Institute, which was a really great chance for me to observe it before I led it myself. And then, yeah, I've led it solo the last 2 years. And then this year, I'm so glad that I'll be co-leading with Don. Last year, I really tried hard to find a partner and couldn't secure one. So, would love anyone who's on the call who would like to help lead this in the future too. We would love some fresh voices as leaders, as speakers. So, like, you all could also participate as speakers or workshop leaders in the Summer Institute or lead it like Don and I are, if that's of interest to you. Um, yeah, so our Summer Institute cohort day this year is going to be virtual over Zoom. It's going to be the day after the 2 day like together part of the Institute on the 14th and the 15th. Last year I moved to doing less time on Zoom. So in the past I had done like a 9 to 4. Last year I did a 9 to 2, and I'm thinking this year we'll start a little later and do a 10 to 3. But open to suggestions or options for that if people have strong feelings. And yeah, it'll be co-hosted by me from the Wild Center. I forgot to mention earlier that I'm based in the Adirondack Park in upstate New York. And then Don from PRI, which is in the Finger Lakes region, but he lives in Buffalo. Similarly, I work in the Adirondacks, live in Burlington, Vermont. So we're both kind of remote workers for our workplaces. I wanted to give everybody a sense of some of the sessions and speakers we've done in the past. We have not secured any speakers yet. We have some ideas that you'll hear about in a moment. But I just kind of wanted to give people a sense of like what we've done in the last couple of years. So last year I had Carter Remy come and talk about sort of like culturally responsive environmental education and how language plays into the ways that we can communicate and educate youth. And this was a really cool session. He did some really cool explorations around like etymology of different environmental education terms, and it was a really awesome session. Carter's based in Rochester, New York, so we had some like Western state representation. We also last year had Grinwald Alves from Start Empowerment come and talk about building resilient classrooms through climate justice education. And Start Empowerment has a climate justice curriculum that's New York City based. So they were there kind of talking about their curriculum and also recruiting teachers to join their cohort that they led last year, 2024-2025 school year. 2 years ago, we had Rob Breen from the New York State Office of Climate Change come and do sort of like a what is climate change in New York State Climate 101 session, which was really insightful and great. Rob has also come to our annual Adirondack Youth Climate Summit at the Wild Center. And yeah, he just has a really comprehensive understanding of the data in our state and is a really good science communicator. He tends to keep his presentation's pretty hopeful despite the data, which is great, and be really, really realistically idealistic about where we're headed as a state with the climate solutions that we're implementing. And then 2 years ago, we also had Blake and Sansoon from Talking Wings come and do a session about art as a climate solution. And they led a conversation and dialogue about how animals and plants and rivers and rocks have voices and how that plays into the climate conversation. So yeah, really kind of wide range of topics that have been covered in sessions in the past. But just to give you a sense of who we've invited to speak at our cohort day before. We also just wanted to show you kind of a draft agenda of what this day looks like. So this is kind of a combo agenda of like what we did in 2023 and 2024. You can see it opens with some welcome. We have about 4 presentations sprinkled throughout the day. We usually do some like short activities and dialogue, one to get people to know each other on the cohort day, and also as a way to reflect on the Summer Institute as a whole and kind of like what are we taking away from this experience from the previous 2 days of workshops. And we usually take a pretty extensive lunch break and do some sort of activity or exploration during that to get people away from their computers, making some observations in their neighborhoods or out a window, or just interacting with the outdoor world in some way, whatever's accessible to folks. And then the last 2 years, we've ended with a Youth Voices section of inviting high school students and recent high school graduates to come and talk about initiatives that they've worked on in New York State to advocate for climate education policy, to help plan youth climate summits or other events in the state, and develop their leadership skills as climate change makers in New York State. So, yeah, this is kind of just like an overview of what we've done in the past and some of the things that we might be interested in doing again this year. Before we jump into our discussion, I just kind of wanted to share where we're at. So Don and Lindsay and I have had a few conversations about what our cohort day this year will look like. And just so you all know, Don and I attend monthly calls with all the cohort leaders. And so we also get ideas from other cohort days across the US who are doing different things. We have access to their agendas. We're in breakout rooms with them, thinking up through these topics together. So we spend a lot of time kind of prepping for this day and thinking about what do educators in New York State need, and how can we help meet those needs with the cohort day. So where we're at right now, you can see we're trying to dovetail our cohort day themes with the Summer Institute themes that Lindsay mentioned earlier on this call. So one of them being climate change education policy. So both Don and I are involved in the Climate Resilience and Education Task Force. And I also have students from the Wild Center who are involved in the Youth Steering Committee as a part of that group. And so we're both really interested in sharing a little bit more about the state of climate education and policy in New York State, which Don touched on briefly in this call, but we would love to do like a longer session on, introduce people to the bills that are have been proposed, are currently in process, and kind of what we're doing with the Climate Resilience and Education Task Force, which is kind of the statewide effort to kind of organize educators around the goal of creating a mandatory climate change education policy for all K-12 schools in New York State. We also, for the educators as change makers and champions, we really want to focus in on the school district level and what teachers can do to influence climate change education at a smaller scale, especially with the challenges that we faced doing this at a statewide scale. And thinking a little bit smaller, school district or even school wide, how teachers and other staff at schools can be influencers to help create change in their school community. For the regrounding and resilience theme, this is a theme that came up a lot during our cohort planning days with other cohort days also, is supporting students with climate-related mental health challenges. And we actually did a session on this last year and had Elisa Teles Munoz from the Climate Mental Health Network come and share some resources and ideas for how teachers can support students in their classroom. And then lastly, the Educating for Justice pathway. So thinking about youth perspectives on climate change and education in New York State. That's something we focus on a lot at the Wild Center. And we have a lot of really amazing young people who are leaders in their communities that we like to bring in to talk to others across the state. And particularly highlighting like rural youth's role in New York State, because a lot happens in New York City, but we are a state beyond the city also. And so we like to try to make sure we have representation from across the state, including New York City at the cohort day. And you can kind of see that from the speakers that we picked. They are based in different parts of the state. Yeah, so that's just where we're at right now with thinking about some themes and where we might go for inviting speakers. But now we'd like to open the floor for a dialogue on some ideas. We'd love to brainstorm with you some themes, sessions, activities, and speakers that you would like to see. And things that maybe you're noticing, trends that you're noticing, whether you're an informal educator or a teacher, or whatever your role is. What are you seeing in this, in this current state, in New York State that you think would be worth exploring during the cohort day? So I am going to move to a blank slide. and go into edit mode. Um, and we would love to open the floor. So feel free to share your ideas in the chat, or if you want to unmute, we would be happy to hear what you're thinking.
Yeah, so please just go ahead and unmute yourself and we'll chat. Although I know one of you is traveling, so maybe can't unmute. But what would you most like to see included for New York State specific stuff? Silence.
I'm going to speak because I feel bad that everybody's silent. This is Trish from Residents Forward. How you doing?
Good.
So I don't know if this is really applicable or not, but one of the things that we're focused on here at Residents Forward is working on climate action projects with the students. And I don't know if that's anything that you want to cover and, around motivating students, coming up with ideas, follow through, things like that, that gets them to really feel engaged. I think the curriculum stuff is super important as well, but for the time being, these, individual efforts to work on projects at home could be really educational as well.
I
Yeah,
love that.
that
Yeah.
also fits in with the Seal of Civic Readiness content.
Nice. Yeah, I was gonna say, obviously we at the Wild Center, we do this a lot at our Youth Climate Summit and support students throughout the year with their climate action plans. We just piloted a new climate action planning model that we co-developed with Earth Force and their environmental action civics model. So we kind of fused what we were doing and what Earth Force was doing. And we piloted it at the Colorado Youth Climate Summit earlier this month. And we're going to be rolling out those new materials at our Youth Climate Summit to the whole network in November. But I would be happy to give people like a sneak peek at those materials too. And I think that could be a really cool session, kind of exploring different frameworks for climate action planning. And then to your point, Trish, like how do we support students? In the follow through with these projects. And that is a huge challenge. That is our biggest challenge with the Youth Climate Summit is like tracking on those projects and supporting students throughout the year. So I think that could be a really rich session. And I love that idea.
I'm so glad you guys are working on that, and we would totally be interested in a sneak peek or anything that you are offering.
Awesome. Cool. That's great.
Trish, can you say a little bit about what Residents Forward does?
Oh, sure. So Residents Forward, we're located in Port Washington, New York, which is on the north shore of Long Island in Nassau County. We're about 35 miles from New York City. We're on Manhasset Bay. Our organization was started in 1968, and we focus on environmental education, beautification projects, and advocacy just for our peninsula. And so, and Cedar knows this because we were in touch with her. We've been in touch with her pretty much for the last few years about our biennial Youth Climate Summit. So we just hosted one this year in March, and we had about 100 students come. We hosted it at our library, and we had speakers, and so fun that we have access to New York City and different organizations that sent representatives to participate in our panels. We had a fast fashion workshop. We had a workshop on water quality. We had a workshop on waste, and then another one on majors and careers. And so now we are starting to work on the climate action projects with the students. The other big thing that we do is elementary grade level environmental education programs. We push into the schools classrooms, and we teach about the aquifer. We have a pond study. Baxter's Pond is one of the ponds located in Port Washington. So we have Alley Pond Environmental Center come out and do an educational program for the students there. And then in second grade, we do a program for the students on renewable and non-renewable resources, like things that we call it life cycle of a backpack. And so it's things that they are familiar with, and we talk about all of those individual items. And we also have a climate awareness garden program where we teach students about square foot gardening.
That's so awesome.
We're also doing oyster gardening now. So we're
Oh my
hosting
gosh,
2
you
oyster
do so
gardens.
much.
We do a lot of stuff. We're hosting 2 oyster gardens in partnership with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Nassau. This is our second year doing the oyster gardening. So we're expanding the program to a second location. So yeah, so we have a lot going on.
That's so awesome. Trish, I want to recruit you as a cohort day speaker. Just come talk about all your amazing work that you're doing.
Let's talk. Let's
Okay,
talk.
let's do it.
Absolutely.
Other folks?
Don, I just want to
Yep.
say my summer intern who's on this call too, you will enjoy, is in Tonawanda.
Very good.
Yes, so local.
Yes, I'm actually in Amherst, not actually in the city, but close.
Everyone says Buffalo, but then it's usually not Buffalo.
Right.
Exactly.
That's how it is in Chicago too. I'm from the Chicago suburbs, but especially living on the East Coast, I just tell people I'm from Chicago because it's easier. Nobody knows where Gurnee, Illinois is, so. Any other ideas for our cohort day? I think this is a really good addition, the climate action projects, and I think it can dovetail with some of the SI themes we talked about earlier.
And I think we're not required to stay to the top of the hour if we're done. So
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming to hear more about our cohort day, for giving your insights and ideas. We would love to, if you're more of a ruminator and you need some time to kind of digest what you just heard and think about some topic ideas, you have Don and I's emails. I can also type mine in the chat for you all because I was not the one sending out all of the emails. I sent out a few, but Don was kind of the main. Oh, that's not my email. Sorry. My keyboard was not working. Okay, great. So yeah, feel free to send me an email if you have other ideas for the cohort day. And we hope that you'll register for the Summer Institute and join us. Trish will definitely reach out to see if you're interested in presenting at the cohort day. And if you have any other speaker ideas for yourself, organizations that you work with, people that you've heard that you've really liked, talking about climate change in New York State, we would love your suggestions also. Don and I have big networks, but we're always looking for new people to bring into this conversation. So
absolutely.
Sounds great.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Good.
Awesome. Look at that. We ended 7 minutes early. Go team.
Yeah.
Yay.
Well, I'm excited. There we go. We got an
That's
idea.
live? Yeah.
What'd you say, Lindsay?
So that's live to you already? It's like on YouTube already?
Yes. Yep. I can
Cool.
actually.
Yeah, my friend Sarah couldn't make
Stop.
it tonight.